I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sure you can hear like a loud roar in the background. I'm hoping you cannot, but there's a huge thunderstorm going on right now. And it's when we have thunderstorms here, we have thunderstorms. And we don't really have light rain. It's either a storm or nothing. And now we're having a storm. And it's very romantic, it's very nice, it's very immersive. You just want to like cocoon inside and do something nice and cozy. But it's also scary as well because the thunder and lightning is so intense and so loud. And at the moment, I have my 2 dogs. Well, one dog is hiding. He's in hiding somewhere because he really hates the thunder. And since we moved from a cold climate to a tropical climate, he's had to get used to all these noises and this intense thunder and the intense lightning as well, and the roar of the rain, because the rain here, it roars, so it's quite amazing. And the trees sway as well to the sound of the rain. It's lovely. Right, today let's talk about how much time it takes to write a fantasy novel. There is no easy answer. It's not a straight and narrow road. It's full of curves and twists and turns. So it's not a straight, simple road at all. We all have these fantastic ideas we have simmering in our heads and in our minds. And we all want to turn them into novels. And I've had people say to me, how long did it take you to write this one? How long does it normally take? I've written books in 6 months, and I've written some of my series over 20 years. And The Dwellers Beneath the Arches took over 20 years to write. Why? Because I started writing as a child, and I finished it as an adult. The first book in the Heathens series took me 6 months to write, from outline to first finished book. My short stories I can write in a day or in a few hours. What I will say to you is that there's a myth, I think, that goes round that you sit there, you write the novel, it comes out perfect, you send it off, you make money. It's a very cookie cutter myth, and it's been made to look like it's easy. You just write it, you get it out, you can write it in a week, you can write it in 2 weeks. Oh, if you're really stretched for time, you can just sit there and write it out in a month. But no novel appears overnight. I want to say that. No novel appears suddenly or quickly. It all depends on the writer, and we're all such individuals that what one author can do in a week, another author will take several months, even a year to write. That's not really a good thing or a bad thing. It's just how it is. But it also shows how different we all are. There is a lot of hidden work that goes behind the scenes to writing a book. A lot of plotting, a lot of planning. You have to find your courage, and you have to find the time to write, especially if you're working other jobs, or if you have a family, or if you have other responsibilities. You have to find that time. So a lot goes on behind the scenes that we don't really talk about. So when you're talking about the amount of time required to write that novel, you need to talk about what goes on behind the scenes and what your schedule is like, how much time you have, and what the expectations are, what sort of book you're writing. If you're writing a cozy mystery, that could be a shorter time span than writing a thriller that deals with police forces and police rules and regulations. Or if you're dealing with an international spy thriller that goes across different countries, time zones, that's a lot more research goes into that. Or if you're forming a fantasy from the deeper, darker recesses of your mind, where you have to form magical systems, what creatures are in the books, what is the landscape like. So you're actually forming an entire world out of nothing. However, I will say this, because when I say, especially when you're writing books like thrillers, or you're writing in that genre, or you're writing fantasies, or very urban fantasies or high fantasy, although the world building around it and the research around it is a lot more time consuming and a lot more goes into it. All that outlining, all that planning that you've done beforehand will make it way easier several months or even years down the line. And when I say years, it doesn't have to be a painful experience. It doesn't mean you're going to struggle with the book. It just means that perhaps you're not ready to finish writing it right now, or you're doing, your 5 minutes of writing a day or 10 minutes of writing a day, and you're working on it gradually. And it's better to work on it gradually and come up with something that's beautiful, that will stand the test of time, than something that you've written haphazardly, shoddily, quickly, and you've just pushed right out there. Look at it more as building a foundation. You're building a strong foundation on which to build this entire world or the storyline, and your readers will thank you for that strong foundation later, because it means that not only will you write the initial book or the initial series, but because you've built this web of this intricate web of complexity, you could also have other series come out of that same world. So you have a very rich collection of stories and rich collection of plot lines and worlds to work with. And then obviously, how about the momentum you need to write the book, the momentum and the energy you need to finish the book? That is part of the time duration. You have to write the first draft, you have to possibly write the second draft, you have to read your first draft, possibly edit it, then write the second draft, and then you might want to go for a third, you might want to send it off immediately after the second draft. There's a lot that goes into it. Are you going to go into the indie world, or are you going to go into the trad world of publishing? There's no wrong or right answer. It's just all up to you. And then how are you going to maintain your momentum on a daily basis? Are you going to, like I say, write for a few minutes a day, a few hours a day? You need to set your own expectations, and you have to look at what you can do that's comfortable for you, that's not too lazy, but where you're not pushing yourself too hard, because you don't want to burn out and you don't want to start to look at the book as a failure. And then obviously you have to have it edited, and editing takes time. It can take sometimes a month, it can take 6 weeks, it can take longer than that. It depends on your editor, it depends on if you've booked your editor ahead. And if you've booked your editor ahead, have you been able to maintain that timeline and gotten the book, the thunder is crazy, gotten the book to the editor on time? Because if you've missed your time, your booking slot, it means that you get pushed back a bit, because your editor loves you, but guaranteed, if they're a good editor, they've got lots of other work to get on with. So have you stuck to that time span? And the editor needs time to publish the work, send it back to you with the revisions, and then you send it back to them with, have you accepted the revisions, and have you accepted have you worked on the changes that they want you to work on? So it's the editing process is another entire different step that can take weeks to months. It's never taken years, I don't think, but depending on how complex your book is, how difficult it is. Is it a historical novel that you need to get fairly accurate because you're writing about historical figures? Is it a political novel where you're writing about current living figures? You have to get these things right, so you can't rush it at all. And your editor, their reputation is dependent on getting the book right, because you're going to say this editor works on this book, and they want to get more business, so they want to get the editing right as well. And then cover design, formatting, working on the blurb. Blurbs can be very difficult to write, because you want a blurb that will just pull your reader right in, where they read the blurb and they're like, yeah, I want to read this book, I definitely want it, I'm going to love this series. And you have to write the right blurb, whether it's a fantasy, a thriller, a sci-fi, a romance. You have to get the blurb right. You need to look at the cover. Are you going to hire a cover designer? What's that going to entail? Do you have an idea for what the cover's going to look like? Or as a cover design, are you going to leave it all to the cover designer? If you are going to leave it to the cover designer, you have to send them the blurb. They need to know what the book is about. So you need to be able to summarize your book clearly in the blurb or in the synopsis, because the cover designer is going to read it and design the book based on what you've written. Otherwise, you need to tell them what you want the cover to look like. And you have to be careful with this, because certain covers will fit certain genres. You can't use a romance cover for a fantasy genre. You can't use a fantasy cover for a thriller genre. It doesn't work that way. So you need to get it right, because they're going to be looking at the cover first, and the cover is what is going to attract the reader. And there's nothing worse than a reader grabbing a book thinking it's for a certain genre and then realizing it's for something completely different. I do realize my voice is getting louder and louder, but so is the thunder and the lightning, and I'm just trying to get through this video in one piece with my sanity intact, because I feel like my voice is competing with the thunder and the lightning. I'm so sorry. And then once again, finally, are you going indie or are you going trad? If you're going trad, when I say trad publishing, the process is going to take much longer. Much longer. There's a lot of gatekeepers, there's a lot of steps to go through, submissions, and the manner of submissions, you have to give them time to go through all the submissions, to go through the piles they have on their desks, and they might get back to you, they might not get back to you. They might say, sorry, but we're not interested. After 6 months of waiting, they might come back to you 9 months later, or they may never come back to you, and that's something you have to be able to deal with. Indie is a lot quicker, but there's a lot less gatekeepers, but the readers can be especially brutal, because the readers will not be so polite, and they can, any errors in the book, spelling errors, anything that hints at being unprofessional, they don't like that, because people are paying money to read your book. And we're in an economy now where there isn't much money around, so you have to be very, very diligent and responsible with your work. But, and I say this in the most positive and whimsical way, there's nothing better than seeing your world brought back to life. No matter what your world looks like, there's nothing just better than having all those ideas down on paper and seeing these characters floating around on the pages, and these worlds you spend years or months or weeks creating. So it's all up to you. How long a fantasy book takes to write is very subjective. It's down to the writer, it's down to the genre and the publishing process, as well as you and what your process is for writing. Are you going to outline properly and sit down for a couple hours a day? Or are you going to do a few minutes a day and preserve your sanity and perhaps have a very strong foundation for an entire world that could span several series? It's all up to you. It's all up to you as the writer. There is no clear line and there's no straight, simple path. And don't let anyone ever tell you that there is, because it's all very different for different writers. So good luck. Let me know how it goes. Let me know what you're planning. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. All right. Until the next video, goodbye.